could you say that to me after everything? You know it's not true.
My name is Rachel Morgan, 27 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the almost daughter in a family that never let me forget where I came from. They adopted me when I was 5, a shy little girl from a foster home outside Tacoma. And for 22 years, I've tried to earn my place at a table that was never truly mine. That night at Belmont's, one of Seattle's most exclusive restaurants, I learned how expensive belonging could be. The chandeliers glowed like captured moons, wine sparkled in tall crystal glasses, and the smell of buttered lobster hung thick in the air. I stood beside the table, clutching my small purse, waiting for someone to pull out a chair. My sister, Victoria, turned toward me in her pearl earrings and perfect confidence. "Go find another table," she said. "This one's for family, not adopted girls." Laughter rippled around the table. My parents, Patricia and Gregory, and my brother Kenneth joined in, like it was a rehearsed comedy bit instead of a public humiliation. Conversations at other tables faltered. People looked up, curious. I felt their eyes on me, a stranger trespassing where she didn't belong. I tried to keep my voice level. "Victoria, that's enough." Patricia's manicured hand waved lazily through the air. "Oh, don't be so sensitive, darling. You know how your sister jokes." I did. I knew every joke, every casual cruelty disguised as teasing. Victoria had spent her life polishing that act, cruelty wrapped in charm. At 32, she had a new real estate company, a doctor husband, and parents who treated her ambition like prophecy. She got the big bedroom, the brand new car at 16, and the private university in Boston. I got hand-me-downs, community college, and the constant reminder that I should be grateful. My father, Gregory, leaned back in his chair. "Sit down, Rachel. You're making a scene." I sat, because that's what I always did, swallowed it. The waiter poured another round of wine. Conversation resumed, as if nothing had happened. Victoria bragged about her latest investment property. Kenneth discussed his promotion at the bank. My parents glowed with pride, asking questions, offering advice. When I finally mentioned landing a $50,000 design contract, my biggest yet, my mother smiled absently. "That's nice, dear." She turned back to Kenneth. "Now, tell us about that bonus." My voice disappeared somewhere between the tablecloth and the laughter. By the time dessert arrived, I was invisible. Then the waiter placed a black leather folder in front of me. Everyone went silent for just a heartbeat, the kind that tells you're the punchline again. "What's this?" I asked. Victoria's lipstick curled into a grin. "Oh, didn't we tell you? You're paying tonight. Consider it your contribution to the family, since you're always taking and never giving." Taking? The word tasted like rust. "I've never—" "The roof over your head," Patricia interrupted smoothly, ticking her fingers. "The food, the clothes, the education. We gave you everything, Rachel. The least you can do is treat us to dinner." My stomach dropped. The waiter stepped back discreetly. I opened the folder. 3,270. They'd ordered the oldest wine, double entrees, 3 desserts. My entire savings account blinked behind that number. "I can't afford this," I whispered. Victoria laughed. Sure you can. Didn't you just say you made $50,000 from that client? Think of this as a down payment on gratitude. $50,000 over 6 months, before taxes, before rent, before student loans. I'd paid a loan because they said we can't help you, sweetie, be realistic. But I couldn't make another scene. I couldn't give them the satisfaction of watching me break. So I handed over my credit card. The waiter left. My hands trembled around my glass of water. I listened to Victoria talk about her upcoming trip to Tuscany, one my parents were joining, of course. Nobody asked if I wanted to come. They never did. When the bill returned, I signed with numb fingers. My throat burned as I whispered, "Threaten to be humiliated." Patricia dabbed her lips delicately. Lovely evening, wasn't it? Same time next month? Next month. As if this were a subscription to cruelty. Something inside me cracked open. I opened my mouth, ready to finally say enough. But before I could, a calm, commanding voice cut through the laughter. Just a moment, please. The sound froze the table. At the far end, Grandma Dorothy rose slowly, her silver hair glowing beneath the chandelier. At 78, she was still regal, still sharper than anyone in the room. Her eyes, pale blue and devastating, swept across the table before landing on me. "Sit down," she said to no one in particular, yet everyone obeyed. I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. I didn't know it yet, but the world I'd been begging to belong to was about to collapse, and this time, under the weight of its own arrogance. The entire restaurant went still. You could hear the soft clink of cutlery from another table, the faint jazz humming from the ceiling speakers, and then nothing, just the weight of Grandma Dorothy's voice filling every corner of that perfect dining room. "I've had enough of this," she said. Her tone wasn't loud, but it had the precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime being obeyed. Even the waiter froze mid-step. My father, Gregory, adjusted his tie like a schoolboy caught in the act. Victoria smirked, trying to reclaim control, but Grandma Dorothy's gaze cut through her like sunlight through smoke. "Mother, please," Patricia began, her voice brittle. "We were just having dinner." "Sit down, Patricia," Grandma Dorothy said, and the command was so clean, so unarguable, that my mother obeyed before realizing she had. Grandma Dorothy had always been different. She wasn't born into wealth, she built it. The daughter of a shipyard worker who read medical journals by candlelight, she'd started as a lab assistant and ended up the founder of one of Seattle's largest pharmaceutical empires. Her name was carved on university walls, her donations listed in museum wings, her portrait hanging in hospital lobbies. But tonight, she didn't look like a legend. She looked like a woman betrayed by her own blood. "I've been watching this family for years," she said, steady and cold. "Watching how you treat Rachel, how you've always treated her." Victoria rolled her eyes, the way she did whenever anything serious interrupted her spotlight. "Mother, it was just a joke. Fun?" Grandma Dorothy's voice cut like broken glass. "You think cruelty is fun? You think humiliating someone in public, someone you call family, is entertainment?" The room around us wasn't breathing. Other diners stopped pretending not to listen. The waiter hovered nearby, holding his tray like a shield. "I am 78 years old," she continued, "and I've spent the last few months thinking about my legacy, about what happens when I'm gone." I saw Victoria's posture change instantly. The word legacy had always been her favorite. Her husband, a real estate developer, had built their entire lifestyle around the assumption that one day, Grandma Dorothy's money would be theirs. "The way it stands," Grandma Dorothy said, "the bulk of my estate would pass to Patricia and then be divided among the grandchildren." Victoria's lips curved, smug and practiced. I'd seen that look before at birthdays and Christmases, the one that said I've already won. "But I've made some changes," Grandma Dorothy went on, reaching into her elegant black purse. "A new will. Signed and notarized yesterday." She placed an envelope on the table. It landed softly, but the sound echoed in the silence. My father frowned. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm deadly serious," she replied. "For 22 years, I've watched you mock, exclude, and belittle this young woman. You took in a child who had lost everything and made her feel like nothing. You should all be ashamed." Patricia's voice trembled. "Mother, you're being dramatic. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Grandma Dorothy interrupted. "You all enjoyed making Rachel small because it made you feel important. But she's the only one at this table who's ever worked for what she has." Her hand came to rest gently on my shoulder. My throat tightened. "Rachel built her business from nothing. She never asked any of you for help. She's kind, generous, and strong, qualities none of you seem to value." Victoria's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. She's not even real family." "Enough." Grandma Dorothy's voice thundered, and even Victoria flinched. "Rachel is more family than any of you have ever been." Then she took out her phone. "Thomas," she said, her longtime driver and assistant. "Yes, file the new will. Effective immediately." The air changed. Victoria went pale. Kenneth's hand slammed the table. "Mother, you can't do this. You're giving everything to her?" "Yes," she said simply. "Every dollar. Every property. Every share. It's all going to Rachel." Patricia's voice cracked. "Billions of dollars." "You can't. I can," Grandma Dorothy said. "And I have." My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. "Grandma," I whispered, "why are you doing this?" She turned to me, her eyes soft now, a sadness hiding behind their steel. "Because I've watched you suffer long enough, sweetheart." The next words came quietly, almost tenderly. "I'm dying." The table gasped. My stomach dropped. "I found out 3 months ago," she continued, calm as if discussing the weather. "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have maybe 6 months left, probably less. And before I go, I want to make sure my legacy doesn't end up in the hands of people who wouldn't know what to do with it." Patricia covered her mouth. Kenneth stared, speechless. Victoria shook her head like she could erase the words. "No," she whispered. "You can't mean this." But Grandma Dorothy smiled faintly. "Oh, I mean every word." She reached for my hand. "You don't need to cry, Rachel. This isn't sad. This is justice." We left the restaurant together. Thomas was waiting outside with the car, his expression unreadable but kind. As we stepped out into the crisp Seattle night, I looked back through the restaurant's glass doors. Victoria was standing, screaming something I couldn't hear. My parents sat in stunned silence, and for the first time in my life, I felt something close to peace. The car door closed behind us, shutting out the noise, the cruelty, the years of pretending. As we drove away, Grandma Dorothy's hand found mine again. Her skin was paper thin, but her grip was fierce. "Tonight," she said softly, "everything changes." The morning light in Madison Park filtered through gauzy curtains, casting pale gold over everything it touched. I woke up in one of Grandma Dorothy's guest rooms, momentarily unsure where I was. The silk sheets, the scent of lavender, the quiet hum of Lake Washington beyond the windows, it all felt unreal. Then memory crashed in. The restaurant, the humiliation, the inheritance, the revelation that she was dying. My phone vibrated on the nightstand, 37 missed calls. Mom, Victoria, Kenneth. Messages blinked on the screen like warning lights. "We need to talk." "You've lost your mind." "How could you manipulate Grandma like that?" I turned it face down. Downstairs, Thomas waited in the foyer with his usual stoic calm. "Miss Dorothy would like to see you in the study," he said, his voice warm but formal. When I stepped into the mahogany-paneled room, it felt like walking into a museum of power. Every surface gleamed. Every photo frame seemed to hold a piece of history. Grandma Dorothy sat behind her desk, posture perfect despite the fatigue beginning to shadow her face. Beside her stood a distinguished man in a navy suit. "Rachel," she said, her tone softening. "This is Walter. My attorney and, more importantly, someone I trust with my life." Walter offered a firm handshake. "Miss Morgan, your grandmother's told me you're a designer. It's good to finally meet you. We have some things to go over." I sat, palms sweating. Walter opened a leather portfolio and began outlining numbers that barely felt real. Total estate value, approximately $8 billion, including $3 billion in liquid assets, properties across the U.S. and Europe, and controlling shares in Hayes Pharmaceuticals. The words tumbled past me like foreign currency. "Rachel," Grandma Dorothy said gently, "you'll have immediate access to $5 million in personal funds. The rest will transition through a trust over the coming months. You'll also have advisors, people I've chosen carefully to guide you." I don't even know where to start," I whispered. "You'll learn," she said. "You've already built something from nothing once. You'll do it again, on a larger scale." But Walter's tone shifted, becoming more precise. "There's something else we need to discuss. Your family will contest this. They always do. And we're ready for that." I frowned. What can they even claim? She's sound of mind. She made her choice. Walter nodded. "True, but they'll allege undue influence, that you manipulated your grandmother, that she was coerced." "That's absurd," I said. "It's predictable," Grandma Dorothy replied. "They're incapable of imagining generosity without motive," Walter continued. "To preempt that, we've secured medical documentation from 3 specialists confirming Miss Dorothy's full mental capacity. Psychological evaluations, 2. Legally, it's ironclad. I exhaled slowly. For the first time, I felt the faint outline of safety. But then Grandma Dorothy's expression changed. The calm authority she wore, so naturally dimmed, replaced by something heavier. "There's one more thing," she said. "Something you deserve to know." She opened a folder and slid it across the desk. I stared down at it, confused. Bank statements, old correspondence, government seals. "Do you know how much your parents received when they adopted you?" She asked quietly. I blinked. "Received?" "Yes. From a trust your birth parents established before they died. It was meant for your care, education, everything you'd need growing up." I flipped through the documents, my breath catching at the numbers. $750,000 transferred directly to Patricia and Gregory Hayes. My voice broke. "I never knew." "They didn't want you to," Grandma Dorothy said. "They spent every cent. Vacations. Victoria's private school. Kenneth's tuition. Even the down payment for their house. Not $1 was set aside for you." The pages blurred through tears. I remembered my teenage years, patching together scholarships, working at a grocery store after class, eating ramen because I couldn't afford better. All while hearing, "We just can't help you, Rachel. Money's tight." It hadn't been. It had been stolen. "They took everything," I whispered. "Yes," she said. "And they've lived comfortably on the lie that they rescued you. But they didn't rescue you, Rachel. They profited from you." I felt hollow. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I needed proof." Walter's team spent 2 years verifying every transaction. And because once you knew, there would be no going back. Whatever pieces of that relationship you were still holding on to, they'd shatter. She was right. I felt something crumble quietly inside me. "What do I do now?" "Nothing," she said. "We'll handle it. Walter's already filed a civil suit against Patricia and Gregory for misappropriation of trust funds. With interest, the amount owed is approximately $3 million. The air in the study seemed to thin. And then my phone rang again. "Dad." "Answer it," Grandma Dorothy said. "Put it on speaker." My hand trembled as I pressed accept. "Rachel," Gregory's voice filled the room, tight with panic. "Please, sweetheart, we need to talk. Your grandmother isn't thinking clearly." "You know she's been ill. She's perfectly clear," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "This is insane," he snapped. "You can't think you deserve all this. You're tearing our family apart over money." I almost laughed. "You mean like the $750,000 you took for adopting me? The money you spent on vacations and tuition while I wore secondhand clothes?" Silence. A long, sharp silence. Then Patricia's voice, brittle and defensive. "That money was for raising you. For food, for housing. You gave me hand-me-downs," I interrupted. "You told me college was my responsibility. Meanwhile, Victoria was at private school in Europe." "Ungrateful," Gregory hissed. "We gave you a home." "You gave me a prison," I said quietly. "And you called it kindness." Dorothy leaned back in her chair, her eyes blazing with pride. Patricia's tone turned sharp. "We'll fight this. We'll take you to court." "Please do," Grandma Dorothy said before I could speak. I'd love to see you explain to a judge how you spent a child's inheritance on yourselves." The call went dead. For a moment, none of us spoke. Walter closed the file gently. "Miss Rachel," he said finally, "you need to understand, your position is strong. They have no legal ground." "They'll still try," I whispered. "Yes," Dorothy said, "but they'll lose." Outside the window, the lake shimmered under the pale sun. The world looked calm, but everything in my life had been set ablaze. Somewhere between the reflection of the water and the reflection of myself in it, I realized I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. By the next morning, the war had gone public. It started with a headline on my phone: "Billionaire matriarch disinherits family, gives fortune to adopted granddaughter." Then came the comments, the talk shows, the morning news segments dissecting every pixel of my life. Overnight, I became a national story, an uninvited character in a morality play I hadn't written. Half the internet called Grandma Dorothy a saint. The other half called me a gold digger. People online argued like they'd grown up with us. Good for Dorothy. Family isn't blood, it's love. She manipulated an old woman. Just look at her eyes, pure greed. I bet she'll blow through the money in a year. I shut the phone off. But the noise was everywhere. TVs in coffee shops, coworkers whispering when I went to my studio. Even my clients politely pausing projects until the media thing settles. That afternoon, Thomas brought me tea on a silver tray and said gently, "Miss Dorothy requests your presence in the library." I found her by the window, sitting upright despite how pale she'd become. The Seattle rain streaked the glass behind her, soft and endless. "They're saying terrible things," I said, before she could speak. "Online. On TV. They think I used you." She smiled faintly. "People are allergic to fairness when it challenges their comfort. Let them talk." "But they don't know me." "No," she said, "but you know you. That's what matters. Still, if they want a story, let's give them the truth." She turned to Walter, who was already setting up his laptop on the table. "We're holding a press conference tomorrow. No more rumors. We'll tell the entire world exactly what's been happening and why." I froze. "A press conference? Grandma, I can't do that. I'm not like you. I'll say something wrong." She cut me off gently. "You'll say what's right. That's all that matters." I couldn't argue with her. I never really could. The next afternoon, the conference room at Hayes Pharmaceuticals looked like a movie set. Rows of cameras, microphones, reporters with glowing eyes ready to devour the next headline. I stood beside Dorothy, heart pounding so hard it hurt. She looked small in her chair, fragile, but when she began speaking, her voice filled the room. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "I've seen the speculation, the gossip, and the outright lies. So let me be clear, I changed my will because I wanted to, because Rachel Morgan, my adopted granddaughter, is the only person in this family who has shown integrity, compassion, and strength." Cameras flashed. She didn't flinch. "For over 20 years," she continued, "I've watched my daughter and her children humiliate Rachel. They took money meant for her care, $750,000, spent it on themselves, and called it generosity. They've treated her like a stranger while living off her parents' legacy. Gasps rippled across the room. Patricia's voice somewhere, distant, echoed in my mind. We gave you everything. Dorothy went on, steady as law. I have documentation, medical evaluations confirming my full mental capacity, bank records proving the theft, and witness statements describing their cruelty. I am not senile. I am simply done being silent. She glanced at me then. Rachel? Every camera in the room turned toward me. My throat tightened. I wanted to disappear, but something in her eyes told me not to. I never wanted this, I began, my voice shaking but audible. I never wanted to be in headlines or inherit billions. I just wanted a family that loved me. I wanted my parents to ask how my day was, my sister to celebrate with me instead of laugh at me. I wanted to belong. The flashes grew brighter, almost blinding. I didn't even know about this inheritance until that night at Belmont's, I continued. I didn't know my grandmother was sick. I didn't know they'd stolen money meant for me. All I knew was that I was being humiliated again, like always. But this time, someone finally stood up for me. My voice broke. Only for a tickle. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving she was right to believe in me. The room erupted in questions, reporters shouting over each other, hands waving, but Walter stepped in, cutting the noise like a blade. No further questions, he said. All documentation will be made public. As we stood to leave, a commotion broke out at the back of the room. Security moved, but too late. Victoria. She burst through the doors like a storm, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, fury burning off her in waves. This is all lies, she screamed. She brainwashed you all. I'm the real victim here. Cameras swung instantly, lenses hungry. Miss Victoria! One reporter shouted. Is it true your parents took money meant for Rachel's trust fund? That money was ours, she shouted without thinking. We earned it, raising her ungrateful. She stopped. The room froze. 1,000 flashes went off in perfect synchrony. Walter smiled faintly. Thank you, Miss Victoria, he said. That will be all. Security escorted her out as she kicked and screamed. Grandma Dorothy exhaled slowly beside me, the smallest smile tugging her lips. Well, she murmured, that was better than I planned. By evening, the footage had gone viral. Victoria's meltdown looped endlessly online, her wild eyes, her admission, the phrase, we earned it by raising her. Commentators pounced. Legal analysts dissected it. Internet users turned it into memes, parodies, reaction GIFs. She just confessed on camera. Rachel doesn't need to prove anything. Victoria did it for her. That's generational karma caught in 4K. The court of public opinion shifted overnight. What had been a messy debate became a wave of support. Dorothy sat in her study, watching the news coverage, frail but satisfied. The truth always finds daylight, she said softly. I didn't answer. I was staring at her hands, so delicate now, veins like fine blue threads under thin skin. You planned this, didn't you? I whispered. She smiled faintly. I planned justice. The rest was timing. As cameras replayed Victoria's downfall again and again, I realized the story wasn't about money anymore. Koina. It was about the power of one woman, old, dying, but still sharper than anyone in the room, to turn cruelty into consequence. And for the first time, I understood this wasn't just her revenge. It was her legacy. 3 days later, the courthouse smelled faintly of rain and disinfectant. Two things that never seemed to leave Seattle. Outside, reporters pressed against barricades, microphones raised like bayonets. The air was thick with curiosity and greed. Inside, I sat beside Grandma Dorothy, her body thinner now, her skin translucent, but her eyes still fierce. Walter stood ready, his briefcase filled with more evidence than emotion. The defendants sat opposite us, Patricia in a powder blue suit designed to look humble, Gregory pretending composure, Kenneth with his lawyer's smirk barely masking fear, and Victoria, her once impeccable aura fractured into nervous tics. The judge, Hon. Margaret Morrison, entered. Her gray hair was pulled back tightly, her expression sharper than the sound of her gavel. This hearing concerns the contestation of the last will and testament of Mrs. Dorothy Hayes. Counsel, proceed. The family's lawyer, a slick man with a tan, better suited to Los Angeles, rose. Your Honor, this is a case of undue influence. My clients contend that Mrs. Hayes, weakened by illness, was manipulated by her adopted granddaughter, who has a history of financial instability and deceit. He gestured toward me with that oily confidence only the guilty can afford. Walter rose next, slow and deliberate. Your Honor, this case isn't about influence. It's about consequence. We'll show that Mrs. Hayes was of sound mind, that her new will was executed lawfully, and that this family, he turned toward them, exploited a child for financial gain, then punished her for surviving it. He began presenting evidence, bank records showing the $750,000 transfer, receipts tracing the funds into vacations and tuition, medical reports verifying Dorothy's clear cognition. Then came witness statements, teachers, neighbors, even the family's former housekeeper who testified to years of cruelty. And finally, the press conference footage. Victoria's voice filled the courtroom. That money was ours. We earned it, raising her ungrateful ass. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Patricia covered her mouth. Kenneth shifted in his seat. Gregory's jaw clenched until his face went red. Walter's voice cut through the noise. Your Honor, that statement, made publicly and voluntarily, confirms what the documents have shown for years. This family believed they owned Rachel, not that they were entrusted to care for her. Judge Morrison raised her eyebrows. Mrs. Hayes, do you wish to make a statement? Grandma Dorothy's voice came out thin but steady. Only this, Rachel is the only one at this table who ever acted like family. The rest have been parasites living off a story of generosity they never practiced. I will not die leaving my legacy in their hands. The silence that followed was profound. Even the air seemed to bow to her. When the judge finally spoke, her words were clear as thunder. I've seen enough. She shuffled the papers before her, then looked directly at Patricia and Gregory. This court finds the will valid. The contest is dismissed with prejudice. Mrs. Hayes' decision stands. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, Based on submitted evidence of misappropriated trust funds, this court orders restitution of 750 Altano plus 22 years of compounded interest, totaling 2.3 million to be paid to Miss Rachel Morgan within 90 days. Patricia collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Gregory stared ahead, unblinking, as if the verdict hadn't yet reached his brain. Kenneth covered his face. Victoria stood, shaking, then screamed, a sound too human to be dignified. "You can't do this," she shrieked. "You're ruining us." The bailiff stepped forward, calm but firm. "Ma'am, sit down." She didn't. She lunged, wild-eyed, but two officers caught her by the arms and guided her out as her voice cracked through the hallway. "You'll pay for this, Rachel. You'll regret it." The door slammed behind her. The echo felt final. Walter exhaled slowly. "It's done," he whispered. But beside me, Grandma Dorothy looked far away, her face pale beneath the courthouse lights. Outside, the storm of cameras waited. Flashes exploded as we emerged, questions flying. How does it feel? Will you reconcile? Are you going to sue further? But I didn't answer any of them. All I could think about was Dorothy's hand in mine, shaking slightly. When we got into the car, she smiled faintly. "It's over, sweetheart. You're free." I turned to her, my throat tight. "Don't say that like it's goodbye." She chuckled softly, a sound both tender and tragic. "Oh, Rachel, I've been saying goodbye for months. But this," she gestured vaguely toward the courthouse fading behind us. "This was worth staying alive for." In the weeks that followed, she weakened quickly. Her doctors said it was the inevitable decline. Her body was losing the fight, though her mind remained sharp as ever. I spent every day at her estate, helping her sort papers, learning the structure of her companies, listening to her stories of how she built an empire from a rented lab and a single patent. Sometimes she would pause mid-sentence and look at me like she was memorizing my face. "You remind me of myself at your age," she said once. "Except I had to fight men in boardrooms. You fought family at dinner tables. Both kinds draw blood." At night, I'd sit by her bedside, sketching in my notebook while she rested. She liked to watch me draw. "Use it," she whispered one evening, her eyes half closed. "Use what they did to you. Turn the wound into work. Build something that protects others who've been made small." That idea took root instantly, a foundation for children like me, adopted, overlooked, or mistreated. A place where they could find legal help, therapy, or simply someone to say, "You matter." Dorothy nodded when I told her. "That will be my real legacy. Not the companies, not the money. Them." Her words carried the weight of a lifetime. The day she passed, the sky over Seattle was white and mercilessly bright. I held her hand as she exhaled for the last time, her final words a whisper I'd keep forever. "Thank you for being my real family." I didn't cry immediately. I sat there for a long while, holding her hand, listening to the quiet house, the faint ticking of the grandfather clock, the distant hum of the lake beyond the glass. When I finally stood, I felt different. Not broken, just anchored. She'd left me the world. Now it was my turn to decide what kind of world it would be. The morning after the funeral, Seattle was wrapped in a thin veil of mist. The city felt quieter than usual, muted, respectful, as if the clouds themselves knew what had been lost. The service had been small, private. Just me, Walter, Thomas, and a few of Grandma Dorothy's closest friends from the old days, people who'd built their fortunes beside her and still spoke about her like she was the last of a dying breed. Patricia had tried to attend. Of course she had. She arrived at the gate in a black hat and crocodile tears, clutching a bouquet of white lilies like a prop. Security turned her away before she could step out of the car. She screamed something about forgiveness, about keeping up appearances, but her voice was muffled by the rolling gate that separated her world from mine. Inside the chapel, as the coffin lowered into the earth, I whispered, "I'll make you proud." Over the next few weeks, the estate transfer finalized. $8 billion, officially under my control. The number was so large, it stopped feeling like money and more like responsibility, an inheritance measured not in comfort, but in weight. The first thing I did was establish the Dorothy Hayes Foundation for adopted and at-risk children. Not for press, not for redemption, for survival. I knew what it felt like to be an unwanted miracle, to sleep under the roof of people who reminded you daily that you owed them for the air you breathed. The foundation would make sure kids like me never had to swallow that kind of silence again. We rented a downtown building with glass walls that caught the morning light. Inside, the walls were covered with photos, children who'd found new homes, teens who'd gone back to school, stories of second chances that made the world feel a little less cruel. I hired Thomas as operations director. He'd been with Dorothy for 30 years, and he treated her mission like religion. Walter joined as a trustee, overseeing the legal and financial infrastructure, and I, somehow, became CEO of something larger than any dream I'd ever allowed myself to have. At night, when the building emptied, I'd walk through the echoing halls and whisper into the stillness, "We did it, Grandma." While I built, my family collapsed. The court's order had left Patricia and Gregory with 90 days to repay Tudor. $3 million. They sold their house, the mansion with marble countertops and imported chandeliers that once hosted charity dinners where my name was never spoken. The cars went next, then the vacation home in Napa. When that still wasn't enough, they drained their retirement accounts. Eventually, they moved into a small apartment near downtown, a neighborhood they used to call the wrong side of the city. The local paper ran a small article, "Hayes family assets liquidated amid legal judgment." I didn't clip it. I didn't smile. I just noted the irony. They'd built their status on other people's suffering, and now they were experiencing what they'd always feared most, irrelevance. Gregory tried to play the victim on television. He cried about how much he loved me like his own. The interviewer asked about the $750,000 adoption trust. He ended the segment early. A month later, he was indicted for financial fraud, separate from the trust case. 3 years in prison. Patricia got 2. I didn't attend the hearings. Kenneth fared only slightly better. Ordered to repay $400,000 from the portion of funds spent on his private education, he sold his condo and car. His wife left him. The last I heard, he was working 2 jobs and sleeping in a friend's guest room. He sent an email once. "Rachel, I know you hate us, but please understand, I didn't know about the money. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. I'm sorry." I read it 3 times before deleting it. And then there was Victoria. Her dissent was biblical. Her meltdown from the press conference had destroyed every shred of her public image. The viral video, her face twisted with rage, shouting that money was ours, became a meme used in thousands of TikToks about entitlement. Her husband filed for divorce 2 weeks later, citing reputation damage. She tried to start a restaurant business. It failed spectacularly after 6 months. The investors sued her for mismanagement. She started a YouTube channel to tell her truth. It lasted 3 episodes before she shut down the comments. She emailed me once, too. "Rachel, I know we've had our differences, but we're still sisters. Maybe we can talk over coffee? I just need a little help getting back on my feet." I didn't respond. Instead, I made a donation of $750,000 to the foundation, in her family's name. The amount they'd stolen from me all those years ago. When the local newspaper covered the donation, the headline read, "Hayes Foundation expands shelter program. Thanks to gift in Patricia and Gregory Hayes' honor." That was the only legacy they would ever have. 6 months after Dorothy's death, I was featured on the cover of Pacific Northwest Business Weekly, "The Heir Who Built Hope: How Rachel Morgan Turned Pain into Power." The article didn't dwell on scandal. It focused on the foundation's work, legal aid for abused adoptees, emergency housing, education scholarships. Over 500 children had been helped in under a year. At the end of the interview, the reporter asked, "Do you think your grandmother would be proud?" I smiled. She already told me she was. Sometimes, late at night, I'd drive back to her estate in Madison Park. The house stood quiet now, its windows glowing faintly in the dark. I'd sit by the lake where she used to drink her tea and imagine her voice beside me, calm and sharp as ever. "You survived them, Rachel. You stayed kind when they were cruel. You built something they never could." And she was right. My family's empire of arrogance had turned to dust. But from that dust, something living, something human, had grown. And that, I realized, was the real inheritance Dorothy had left me. Not money, not revenge, but the understanding that power means nothing if it doesn't protect someone smaller than you. A year passed. The foundation's new headquarters stood proudly in downtown Seattle, a sleek glass tower with a soft glow that stayed on late into the night. Through the windows, you could see murals drawn by the very children we had helped, bright, chaotic, full of hope. I'd insisted that every wall carry their fingerprints, not mine. It wasn't about legacy anymore. It was about redemption. When I walked through the lobby each morning, people greeted me with smiles that still felt surreal. I wasn't the invisible girl anymore, not the unwanted daughter or the charity case at the family table. I was Rachel Morgan, CEO, designer, and founder of the Dorothy Hayes Foundation for adopted and at-risk children. We'd expanded beyond Seattle, partnering with social workers, lawyers, and therapists across the country. By our first anniversary, the foundation had provided emergency shelter, education grants, and legal protection to more than 500 children. Every one of them was a small miracle, proof that love and justice could grow out of pain. Sometimes I'd stand on the rooftop terrace and look at the skyline shimmering above the water, whispering, "We did it, Grandma." But the ghost still called. My phone buzzed one morning, an email from Kenneth. The subject line read, "Please help Mom. Rachel, Dad's still in prison. Mom's out, but she's struggling, barely surviving. You've made your point. We've lost everything. Please, if you have any compassion left, help her. She's sick. She's sorry." I sat staring at the screen for a long time. Was she sorry because she understood what she'd done, or because she'd lost everything she'd built on it? I opened a new email window and began typing. They were never my parents. They were caretakers who took money meant for a grieving child and spent it on themselves. I owe them nothing, but I will make you a promise. I'll donate the same amount they stole, $750,000, to a program helping adopted children escape abusive families. I'll do it in their names. That will be the only legacy they ever leave behind. I hit send. Then I blocked his address. And just like that, the noise stopped. Months later, I sat in the Foundation's main conference room for an interview with a journalist from Forbes. The title they were planning was "The Girl Who Inherited $1 Billion and Gave It Away." The reporter leaned forward, recorder on the table. "So tell me, Rachel, do you ever think about your family now?" I thought about that dinner at Belmont's, about the laughter, the way the waiter's hand had trembled as he slid that $3,270 bill in front of me. I thought about Patricia's dismissive smile, Kenneth's cold indifference, Victoria's voice saying, "This one's for family, not adopted girls." "I don't think about them much," I said finally. "They taught me what kind of person I never want to be. For that, I guess I'm grateful." The reporter nodded, scribbling something in her notebook. "What about the money? Do you ever worry it might change you?" I smiled faintly. "Money doesn't change who you are, it just amplifies it. If you're cruel, it makes you more dangerous. If you're kind, it gives you reach." She looked up, meeting my eyes. "And you? What are you?" I paused, then said, "I'm proof that kindness can survive anything." That article went viral, not because of scandal this time, but because it struck a nerve. The comments weren't arguments anymore. They were gratitude. People shared stories of being adopted, of surviving families that didn't love them, of finding chosen families who did. The story became a mirror, and this time, the reflection wasn't pain, but healing. Years passed. The foundation grew into an international network. We built safe homes in 5 countries, funded therapy programs for thousands of children, and established scholarships in Grandma Dorothy's name at universities across the U.S. Every time I signed a check or opened a new branch, I felt her hand on mine again, the same steady grip she'd given me in that restaurant when everything fell apart. My family, the one bound by blood, never recovered. Patricia and Gregory lived out their years quietly, tucked away in a small apartment. Gregory's health deteriorated in prison, and when he died, Patricia sent a handwritten note I never opened. Kenneth filed for bankruptcy twice, before disappearing from public life. And Victoria, oh, Victoria, ended up working in telemarketing, her voice drained of its old superiority, calling strangers for commissions she never earned. Every now and then, I'd hear rumors that she tried another business, another relationship, another reinvention. They all failed. It wasn't revenge. It was gravity. People eventually fall to the weight of what they've done. On the 5th anniversary of the foundation, we unveiled a new wing, a research center for adoption ethics and legal reform. A bronze plaque was mounted in the lobby, engraved with the words, "For every child who was told they didn't belong, you do. You always did." The crowd applauded. I smiled, but my eyes drifted to the portrait hanging above the plaque, Grandma Dorothy Hayes, poised and serene, that same half-smile she'd worn the night she saved me. As the ceremony ended and the reporters packed up their cameras, I stayed behind, standing alone beneath her image. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of city life outside. "Do you see, Grandma?" I whispered. "They can't hurt me anymore. They can't hurt anyone like me anymore." I felt the faintest breeze through the glass doors, like her answer moving through the air. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the girl who'd been humiliated at a family dinner. I felt like someone who had taken every shard of pain and turned it into light. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying the people who broke you. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be. I looked out across the skyline as the sunset burned gold over Lake Washington. Somewhere out there, my old family was fading into the background, and my new one, the one built on compassion, not cruelty, was growing stronger every day. And that, I realized, was the truest form of justice, not retribution, not punishment, but peace. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. And please, remember to subscribe for more stories like this. Stories about hope, redemption, and the kind of love that survives even the worst betrayals. Until next time, take care of your heart and your family.